which doesn't bother me.
The House will come to order. Prayer by the chaplain.
The Hebrew Bible in the book of Isaiah records the time when the nation's capital had been destroyed by foreign enemies. The people are sent into exile, but after a time they come back. God gives them a new start based on compassion and justice. He gives them both a promise and a charge. He says, "Your ancient ruins shall be rebuilt. You shall raise up the foundations of many generations. You shall be called the repairer of the breach, the restorer of streets to live in." Oh, Lord God, in your great wisdom, you made us to be co-creators with you in this magnificent world in which we live. You give us a high calling. Today, that calling is to be repairers of the breach, peacemakers, reconcilers, bridge builders, the restorers of faith in our democracy. Grant us courage, wisdom, and strength to live into this high calling. This is our time. Let us not miss the great moment. Thank you that we get to be your partners in rebuilding a just order. In the name of the God of freedom, amen.
The chaplain for today is Reverend Dennis Johnson, retired Lutheran minister and former House chaplain, Minneapolis, Minnesota. Pledge of Allegiance. Please remain standing and recite the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. The certificate of election for Representative-elect Matthew J. Grossel has been issued and is on file. Will Representative-elect Grossel from District 2A please stand and raise your right hand to take the oath of office? Do you solemnly swear or affirm that you will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Minnesota, and that you will faithfully discharge the duties of the office to which you have just been elected to the best of your ability, so help you God?
I do.
Let's congratulate Representative Grossel. The clerk will take the roll. Members, please state your name, your location, and present.
Acom.
Acom, Minnetonka, present.
Acom, Minnetonka, present. Agbadge.
Agbadge, Minneapolis, present.
Agbadge, Minneapolis, present. Ackland.
Ackland, St. Paul, present.
Ackland, St. Paul, present. Albright.
Albright, St. Paul, present.
Albright, St. Paul, present. Anderson.
Anderson, St. Paul, present.
Anderson, St. Paul, present. Backer.
Backer, Browns Valley, present.
Backer, Browns Valley, present. Bonner.
Bonner, St. Paul, present.
Bonner, St. Paul, present. Barr.
Barr, East Bethel, present.
Barr, East Bethel, present. Baker. Baker, St. Paul, present. Becker Finn.
Becker Finn, St. Paul, present.
Becker Finn, St. Paul, present. Bennett.
Bennett, St. Paul, present.
Bennett, St. Paul, present. Berg.
Berg, St. Paul, present.
Berg, St. Paul, present. Bernardi.
Bernardi, St. Paul, present.
Bernardi, St. Paul, present. Bierman.
Bierman, St. Paul, present.
Bierman, St. Paul, present. Bliss.
Yes, St. Paul, present.
Bliss, St. Paul, present. Bow. Bow. Bolden.
Bolden, Rochester, present.
Bolden, Rochester, present. Burkle.
Burkle, St. Paul, present.
Burkle, St. Paul, present. Carlson.
Carlson, Bloomington, present.
Carlson, Bloomington, present. Christensen.
Christensen, Stillwater, present.
Christensen, Stillwater, present. Daniels.
Daniels, St. Paul, present.
Daniels, St. Paul, present. Daudt. Daudt, St. Paul, present. Davids. David, St. Paul, present. Davney.
Davney, St. Paul, present.
Davney, St. Paul, present. Damath.
Damath, Cold Spring, present.
Damath, Cold Spring, present. Detmer.
Detmer, St. Paul, present.
Detmer, St. Paul, present. Drzkowski.
Drzkowski, Winona, present.
Drzkowski, Winona, present. Eklund.
Eklund, St. Paul, present.
Eklund, St. Paul, present. Edelson.
Edelson, Edina, present.
Edelson, Edina, present. Elkins.
Elkins, St. Paul, present.
Elkins, St. Paul, present. Erickson.
Erickson, St. Paul, present.
Erickson, St. Paul, present. Feist.
Feist, St. Paul, present.
Feist, St. Paul, present. Fisher. Excused. Frankie. Frankie, St. Paul, present. Franson. Franzen. Frazier.
Frazier, New Hope, present.
Frazier, New Hope, present. Frederick.
Frederick, St. Paul, present.
Frederick, St. Paul, present. Freiberg.
Freiberg, Golden Valley, present.
Freiberg, Golden Valley, present. Garofalo.
Garofalo, Farmington, present.
Garofalo, Farmington, present. Gomez.
Gomez, St. Paul, present.
Gomez, St. Paul, present. Green.
Green, St. Paul, present.
Green, St. Paul, present. Greenman.
Greenman, St. Paul, present.
Greenman, St. Paul, present. Grossel.
Grossel, St. Paul, present.
Grossel, St. Paul, present. Grunhagen. Grunhagen, excused. Haley.
Haley, Red Wing, present.
Haley, Red Wing, present. Hamilton.
Hamilton, St. Paul, present.
Hamilton, St. Paul, present. Hanson R.
Hanson R., St. Paul, present.
Hanson R. St. Paul, present. Hanson J.
Hanson J. St. Paul, present.
Hanson J. St. Paul, present. Hassan.
Hassan, St. Paul, present.
Hassan, St. Paul, present. Hausman.
Hausman, St. Paul, present.
Hausman, St. Paul, present. Heinrich.
Heinrich, St. Paul, present.
Heinrich, St. Paul, present. Heinzman.
Heinzman, St. Paul, present.
Heinzman, St. Paul, present. Herr, St. Paul, present. Hertas.
Hertas, St. Paul, present.
Hertas, St. Paul, present. Hollins.
Holland, St. Paul, present.
Hollins, St. Paul, present. Hornstein.
Hornstein, Minneapolis, present.
Hornstein, Minneapolis, present. Howard.
Howard, St. Paul, present.
Howard, St. Paul, present. Hewitt.
Hewitt, St. Paul, present.
Hewitt, St. Paul, present. Igo.
Igo, St. Paul, present.
Igo, St. Paul, present. Johnson.
Johnson, St. Paul, present.
Johnson, St. Paul, present. Jordan.
Jordan, St. Paul, present.
Jordan, St. Paul, present. Jurgens. Jurgens, St. Paul, present. Keeler.
Keeler, St. Paul, present.
Keeler, St. Paul, present. Keel.
Keel, Hammond Township, present.
Keel, Hammond Township, present. Cleveland.
Cleveland, St. Paul, present.
Cleveland, St. Paul, present. Cagle.
Kegel, Spring Lake Park, present.
Cagle, Spring Lake Park, present. Katiza-Watun.
Katiza-Watun, Eden Prairie, present.
Katiza-Watun, Eden Prairie, present. Kosnick.
Cosmic, St. Paul, present.
Kosnick, St. Paul, present. Creshaw.
Creshaw, Little Falls, present.
Creshaw, Little Falls, present. Lee.
Lee, Minneapolis, present.
Lee, Minneapolis, present. Liebling.
Liebling, Rochester, present.
Liebling, Rochester, present. Lilly.
Lily, St. Paul, present.
Lilly, St. Paul, present. Lippert.
Lippert, Northfield, present.
Lippert, Northfield, present. Lislegard.
Lislegard, St. Paul, present.
Lislegard, St. Paul, present. Long.
Long, St. Paul, present.
Long, St. Paul, present. Lucero.
Lucero Dayton, present.
Lucero, Dayton, present. Lewick.
Lewick, St. Paul, present.
Lewick, St. Paul, present. Mariani.
Mariani, St. Paul, present.
Mariani, St. Paul, present. Markwart.
Markwart, Dilworth, present.
Markwart, Dilworth, present. Mason.
Mason, St. Paul, present.
Mason, St. Paul, present. McDonald.
McDonald, Delano, present.
McDonald, Delano, present. Mecklin.
Macklin, Becker Township, present.
Mecklin, Township, present. Miller.
Miller, St. Paul, present.
Miller, St. Paul, present. Moeller.
Moeller, Shoreview, present.
Moeller, Shoreview, present. Moran. Moran. Morrison.
Morrison, Deep Haven, present.
Morrison, Deep Haven, present. Mortensen.
Mortensen, St. Paul, present.
Mortensen, St. Paul, present. Mueller.
Mueller, Austin, present.
Mueller, Austin, present. Munson.
Munson, St. Paul, present.
Munson, St. Paul, present. Murphy. Murphy. Nash. Nash, St. Paul, present. Nelson M.
Nelson M., St. Paul, or Brooklyn Park, present.
Nelson M. Brooklyn Park, present. Nelson N.
Nelson N., St. Paul, present.
Nelson N. St. Paul, present. New Brindley.
New Brindley, Woodbury, present.
New Brindley, Woodbury, present. Nor.
Nor, St. Paul, present.
Nor, St. Paul, present. Novotny.
Novotny, St. Paul, present.
Novotny, St.
Elk River, present.
Novotny, Elk River, present. O'Driscoll.
O'Driscoll, Sartell, present.
O'Driscoll, Sartell, present. Olson B.
Olson B., Burnsville, present.
Olson B. Burnsville, present. Olson L. Olson L. St. Paul, present. O'Neill.
O'Neill, St. Paul, present.
O'Neill, St. Paul, present. Pulowski.
Pulowski, Winona, present.
Pulowski, Winona, present. Petersburg.
Petersburg, St. Paul, present.
Petersburg, St. Paul, present. Farr.
Farr, LeSueur, present.
Farr, LeSueur, present. Pearson.
Pearson, St. Paul, present.
Pearson, St. Paul, present. Pinto.
Pinto, St. Paul, present.
Pinto, St. Paul, present. Poston.
Poston, Lakeshore, present.
Poston, Lakeshore, present. Pryor.
Pryor, Minnetonka, present.
Pryor, Minnetonka, present. Quam.
Guam, Byron, present.
Where? Quam.
Guam,
Byron, present. Raleigh.
Raleigh, St. Paul, present.
Raleigh, St. Paul, present. Rasmussen. Rasmussen, St. Paul, present. Ryer.
Ryer, Egan, present.
Ryer, Egan, present. Richardson.
Richardson, Mendota Heights, present.
Richardson, Mendota Heights, present. Robbins. Robbins, St. Paul, present. Sandell.
Come back to you. I can't see it.
Sandell. Sandell.
Sandell.
Sandell, St. Paul, present.
Sandell, St. Paul, present. Sandsted.
Sandsted, Hibbing, present.
Sandsted, Hibbing, present. Schumacher.
Schumacher, Laverne, present.
Schumacher, Laverne, present. Schultz.
Schultz, St. Paul, present.
Schultz, St. Paul, present. Scott.
The indoors of various
Scott, St. Paul, present.
Scott, St. Paul, present. Stevenson.
Stevenson, St. Paul, present.
Stevenson, St. Paul, present. Sundin.
Sundin, St. Paul, present.
Sundin, St. Paul, present. Swazinski.
Swazinski, Nordland Township, present.
Swazinski, Norman Township, present. Tice.
Tice, St. Paul, present.
Tice, St. Paul, present. Tompkins. Thompson.
Thompson, St. Paul, present.
Thompson, St. Paul, present. Torkelson.
Torkelson, St. Paul, present.
Torkelson, St. Paul, present. Erdahl. Erdahl, St. Paul, present. Vang.
Vang, Brooklyn Center, present.
Vang, Brooklyn Center, present. Waslewick.
Waslewick, White Bear Township, present.
Waslewick, White Bear Township, present. West.
West St. Paul, present.
West, St. Paul, present. Winkler. Winkler, St. Paul, present. Walgamot. Walgamot, St. Paul, present. Zhangjiang.
John St. Paul, present.
Zhangjiang, St. Paul, present. Zhangti.
Zhang T. St. Paul, present.
Zhangti, St. Paul, present. Joachim.
Joachim St. Paul, present.
Joachim, St. Paul, present. Speaker Hartman. Speaker Hartman, St. Paul, present. Bo.
Bo Chanhassen, present.
Bo. Chanhassen, present. Franzen. Franzen.
Branson, St. Paul, present.
Franzen, St. Paul, present. Moran.
Moran, St. Paul, present.
Moran, St. Paul, present. Murphy.
Murphy, St. Paul, present.
Murphy, St. Paul, present.
A quorum is present. The clerk will read the journal of the preceding day.
Journal of the House, 92nd Session 2021, second day, St. Paul, Minnesota, Thursday, January 7th, 2021.
If there is no objection, further reading of the journal will be dispensed with, and the journal will be approved as corrected by the chief clerk. Hearing no objection, the journal is approved as corrected by the chief clerk. Introduction of bills. The following House files have been offered for introduction today. The chief clerk will report the House files and give them their first reading.
Introduction and first reading of House Files 37 through 72.
First reading, House Files 37 through 72. Messages from the Senate.
A message from the Senate. Madam Speaker, I hereby announce the adoption by the Senate of the following concurrent resolution herewith transmitted. Senate Concurrent Resolution Number 3, a Senate Concurrent Resolution relating to adjournment for more than 3 days. The message is signed Cal R. Ludeman, Secretary of the Senate. The concurrent resolution is being referred to the Committee on Rules and Legislative Administration.
Motions and resolutions. There are copies of the non-controversial motions at the House desk and online. If there's no objection, we will take action on these motions first. Hearing no objection, the motions prevail.
Daudt moves that House Concurrent Resolution Number 1 be recalled from the Committee on Rules and Legislative Administration and be placed upon its adoption.
The member from Isanti, Representative Daudt, to your motion.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. Obviously, I have introduced a resolution that would end the governor's emergency powers that he has called under Chapter 12 in our state statutes. That motion was referred to, or that resolution was referred to the Rules Committee, where it now sits. Rule 4.3 does allow for, by a majority vote of the body, for that resolution to come now before the body. So I'm asking members to vote with me to bring that resolution here to the floor. Then we would debate that resolution and have a conversation about whether or not it's appropriate to end the emergency powers. Certainly I look forward to that debate, but this first vote will get it here. If you vote against this first one, just to be clear, you are also voting against ending the governor's emergency powers. By virtue of the fact that you're eliminating the bill from coming here, or the motion from coming here. So it is time. The legislature is in session. It is time for us to bring this up. It is time for us to have this vote. It's certainly acceptable. If you want to vote against this, I don't think that's the right vote. I'm going to make a pretty compelling case as to why I believe that's not the right vote. I do know that a majority of the members of this body have voted to end the emergency powers, or at least voted to bring this up. So I fully expect this first motion to pass and to bring this resolution to the House floor. So with that, Madam Speaker, I would request that this come to the floor, and I would request a roll call vote on this motion.
Representative Daudt requests a roll call. Are there 15 hands? Members, there are not 15 hands in the chamber, and so in order to determine whether there are 15 hands, members of the Minnesota House of Representatives have 60 seconds to email, if they would raise their hand, to hands@house.mn to support Representative Daudt's request for a roll call. We will wait 60 seconds to determine if we have 15 hands for a roll call vote. Seeing 15 hands, we will have a roll call. Representative Winkler.
Madam Speaker, members, I ask for a no vote on the Daudt motion. This is a motion to change the process in the Minnesota House by which bills and resolutions are introduced, given committee hearings, public debate is permitted, public input is permitted, member debate is permitted, the ability to have testimony from relevant experts, from the executive branch and others, all of which is possible through a committee process. By changing the process in this way today, we are taking a bill out of the forum of public debate. We are taking the bill out of the forum of input from the public in general, and we are creating a system in which, with no deliberation, no thought, and no care during a regular session, we are suddenly going to start messing with things that are of grave importance to the health and welfare of the people of Minnesota. We have created a proper process to discuss this important question of the governor's emergency authority. The process is through a committee chaired by Representative Pawlowski, a member who has not only a strong history of following process and procedure in the Minnesota House, but is also sharing many of these same concerns and is busy working with Republican members to plan out a series of hearings on this issue. So if you wish to avoid normal process and regular order, vote with Representative Daudt. If you wish for the Minnesota House to play its proper function as a legislative body in reviewing laws, procedures, and statutes in a thoughtful way that includes the public, then vote no.
Any further discussion on the motion?
Madam Speaker,
State your name.
Representative Eric Mortensen.
Representative Mortensen.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise to speak in favor of this motion. I don't believe it's sincere or true that the public has not had an opportunity to debate this. I think the public has been debating this for 10 months now. And I know, looking at my email, since I joined this body a week ago, 93% of the emails that I've been getting want us to put an end to the peacetime emergency.
Further discussion. I believe you are last, Representative Daudt. I am not seeing any further members desiring to speak.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. I appreciate Representative Winkler's version of whether or not this would depart from the regular normal order of business of the House of Representatives. But I want to do this in a respectful way, but it's very difficult to say what I'm about to say without expressing some real frustration about the process and about the lack of action on the part of the leadership. So I don't want that to be personally offensive, but the reality is I do feel that it's my obligation to call out what I see as an irresponsible inaction by the majority in this body. First, before I do that, though, I'd like to ask Representative Pawlowski to yield for a question, and the intent of my question will be to ask him for his timelines, both on the longer-term rewrite of Chapter 12, which I think we all need to, or I think we all kind of understand that needs to happen. And that rewrite of Chapter 12 would be something kind of long-term to make sure that in the future, if the body intends that emergency powers would be handled differently. And then there's the short-term peeling back of the onion right now, getting the legislature more involved and reacting on a quicker basis and involved in the immediacy of the emergency powers that are in place right now. So I see those as two different things. One is the short term, how do we peel back the onion on the emergency powers right now? And secondly, the longer term, and I'm looking for a timeline on that. So if he would yield, Madam Speaker.
Representative Pawlowski, will you yield to a question?
I will yield.
He will yield. Representative Pulowski.
Madam Speaker and Representative Daudt, we're working on having a hearing as early as perhaps next week. I intend to have a hearing on the executive orders to see which of those executive orders we need to keep and which of those we can dispense with. And we are working then simultaneously on a redraft of Chapter 12 to make sure that we in the future will have separation of powers and we will not be in a situation as we were over 7 special sessions. And by the way, during those special sessions, our committees were not meeting. This time we will have public input. There will be input from both sides of the aisle, well, all 3 sides of the aisle in the House for that matter. So that's the best answer I can give you now, but I'm hopeful we can have a committee hearing as early as next week.
Representative Daudt.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. If he would continue to yield.
He
I
will.
will yield.
Oh, Representative Pulowski, would you yield?
I will yield.
Representative Daudt.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I do want to say I have the utmost of respect for Representative Pulowski, so I appreciate his indulgence. And what I'm looking for is, do you envision, how long do you think the timeline is going to be? I understand that you want to have a committee hearing next week. I would hope that would happen sooner, that we could do it this week. I think the immediacy of the emergency powers that are in place right now dictates that we should be acting quicker. I think the votes of our members of this body kind of say that we probably should be acting quicker. I'm not so interested in when the first hearing might be, but more, when do you think we might have some final product to deal with, number 1, the emergency powers right now, and then number 2, something that might be, end of session kind of thing on the rewrite of Chapter 12. If you could give me a kind of a, when you think a product might be ready to come to the House floor.
Representative Pulowski.
Madam Speaker, Representative Daudt, I would hope that we would be able to review the executive orders and we would be able to work with the administration and of course the Senate on seeing which of those executive orders we can now confidently do without and which would have to be continued. That would be the first order of business. The second order of business is the ongoing redraft of Chapter 12 and making sure that we have separation of powers and that we won't be put in a situation again as we were the last year. I wish I could give you absolutes. I was appointed chair of this committee less than a week ago. We are under still very, very difficult times with the reviser and drafting. And as you've seen, Zoom hearings have been, shall we say, episodic at best. So given those limitations, we will work as fast as we can, but we will work with public input and we will make sure that we are doing our job of due diligence in reviewing both the executive orders and the draft that's needed to be done of Chapter 12.
Representative Daudt.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, Representative Pulowski. I don't have any further questions for Representative Pulowski, but I do appreciate his indulgence. I did actually, which is a little unconventional, but I appointed myself as the lead on the committee to deal with legislative reform that Representative Pulowski shares. So I think we both have an appreciation for the rules of the House and making sure that this place functions the way it was intended. So I do look forward to rolling up my sleeves. I did have a conversation with Representative Pulowski on the phone I think last week, where we talked about some of these things, and I did commit to him that I intend to work with him. I did also indicate to him that I think the frustration level by not only myself, and I know many other members, I believe a majority of the members of this body, and I believe a large number of Minnesotans, that they want the legislature working with the governor. So not only was I going to roll up my sleeves and work with him, I was going to continue to force the issue here on the House floor to end the governor's emergency powers because, and I want to explain very clearly why I think that's important. I understand that there are some things that we will as a legislative body have to put in place. For instance, there are some federal dollars that need to be dealt with, and some of those federal dollars and grants that we've received from the federal government are contingent on us having an emergency powers in place, and we have to deal with expending those dollars. Those are sorts of things that will need to be worked out and will need to be worked out quickly. But my real criticism of the majority in this body, and I'm going to say this as respectfully as I can, is that there has been, here we are in, I think, our 10th month of emergency powers, and we're being told that we can have a hearing next week to start to talk about that. We're in our 10th month of emergency powers, and nobody from the majority party has thought that maybe we should have had some hearings on this prior to now. I mean, it's actually kind of shocking to say that we're not ready for this moment. We're not ready for the legislature to step up. because the majority party didn't see this coming. And so we stand on the House floor and we make a motion to end the emergency powers. And I want to be very clear, I'm not a denier of science or a denier of COVID. This has nothing to do with that. I assure you, nothing to do with that. This is about making sure the legislature is a co-equal branch of government and that the governor works with, consults with, and that we pass legislation to help Minnesotans respond to COVID and recover from COVID the way we normally do, with the legislature and the governor working together. That is absolutely what this is about. And I can't believe we're in our 10th month of emergency powers and we're being told that in a week we might be able to have our first hearing in a week. Really? So my intent to bring this up and to vote on it, and by the way, the emergency powers don't end the second we vote on this. The Senate also has to pass this concurrent resolution, so this goes to the Senate. And I believe that they adjourned today to recess on Thursday at noon is when their normal time is. I assume that's what they did today. Maybe somebody can check and give me a thumbs up if that's the case. But so nothing's going to happen until Thursday at noon. And I assume we could have some conversations with the Senate about what needs to transpire in the meantime. And if they needed to delay until Monday or Tuesday of next week, we could certainly do that to make sure we have the right safeguards in place. But if we don't force ourselves to act, will we? That's my question for you. Will we? Will you act if we don't force the issue? We know that a majority of the members of this body want to end the emergency powers. They have voted that way in the past. And we know that the leadership has promised that, oh, don't worry, we're going to go through a process and we're going to have hearings. But they have had the opportunity to have hearings and to deal with this issue for 10 months. And apparently nobody saw this coming. And I have no qualms about us passing this resolution to force ourselves to deal with this. And there's no reason. I know all of you, and I know that we are absolutely capable of rising to the occasion of putting in place the appropriate safeguards in the next 48 hours if we had to. But you know what? If we don't ever have to, it's never going to happen. Just like it hasn't happened for the last 10 months. And in the meantime, some organizations are suggesting that maybe as much as 40% of the businesses in those organizations, I'm talking about restaurants, bars and restaurants, maybe as many as 40% of them will be closed permanently in the state of Minnesota. Maybe those closures were absolutely 100% appropriate. I'm not trying to debate each individual executive order. I'm only suggesting that when constituents in my district have an issue, they call me and they say, hey, Kurt, what's the governor going to say? Or what's he doing? And I can't answer that question because I don't know. He doesn't always share with us the data he uses to make decisions. And you know what I do know? I know that it's easy for one of my constituents to contact me in my office because I only represent 134th of the state. But the governor can't, right? I mean, he could. He could respond to every constituent, but I know the history. I know that my constituents send email after email after email and phone call after phone call, and they get no response. This really is about us representing our constituents and making sure that their voices are heard in the process. And if we don't bring up this resolution and end the emergency powers, nothing's going to happen in an orderly fashion. And do you know how I can make you that promise? Because it's been 10 months and nothing has happened to this date. No preparation, no hearings. As if today was a surprise. You know what? We owe it to our constituents to do the job that they sent us here to do. And I also know apparently it's 11 a.m. on Thursday is when the Senate comes back in. So even if we pass this today and vote to end the emergency powers, they can't do anything until 11 o'clock on Thursday. And I assure you, if we do this, there will be a mass scramble to make sure that we're dotting all the I's and crossing all the T's. And I wish I didn't have to force that. I wish that the appropriate planning had gone into place. I tried back in June and July. I negotiated with the governor's office for a couple of weeks, personally. I'll tell you, I got no real support from the majority party in this body. No offense to them. I appreciate the working relationship that we have. And I've committed to them that I'm going to roll up my sleeves and I'm going to work through every avenue possible. But I really, honestly, truly believe that if you don't vote to end the emergency powers now, we're going to be having this conversation again in 30 days. And 30 days is unacceptable, and it is too long for this body to deliberate. And if you take 30 days to deliberate on this, you are validating everything the governor is saying, that he needs emergency powers. And you're discrediting and discounting every one of your constituents who doesn't have an avenue to talk to somebody at the governor's office. But they do have you. They do have you representing them. And this is not a partisan issue. I know that there are people on both sides of the aisle that support ending the emergency powers. We've seen that month after month. But it is time, members. It is time. It's time for us to force the issue after 10 months of inaction. It's time for us to force ourselves to roll up our sleeves and do the job our constituents sent us here to do, so that their voices can be heard in this beautiful building. So members, please vote to bring this resolution up. And as a reminder, if you vote against this, you are voting against ending the governor's emergency powers, period. That is not an arguable thing. So if you do support ending the governor's emergency powers, we gotta debate this resolution. And I'll tell you what, if you vote against this motion, not only are you voting against the emergency powers, you're voting against even talking about it here in the House chamber. So it's time, members. I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid of what will transpire over the next 48 or 72 hours. You are up to the task. We are up to the task. Let's do our job. Vote yes.
Members, I know we're starting to all get used to the new technology, but I want to let you know when you raise your hand on Zoom, I can't see that, but if you press the request to speak button, that I can see that. So if there is a member seeking recognition, if you could please use the request to speak button, then I will be able to tell that you would like to be recognized. I do not have currently anyone who has pressed their request to speak.
Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker, I did, Madam Speaker.
Representative McDonald, I hear your voice. I believe I also hear Representative Pulowski.
That's correct.
All right, Representative McDonald.
Yes, Madam Speaker, thank you. I did press the button, but I suppose we'll have to learn to get used to this new technology. I just briefly want to speak on behalf of supporting the motion. It is definitely time to end the emergency powers. I don't think that anyone in this chamber, I'd be surprised to think that if you believe in your heart that to carry on with this the last 10 months, that the governor should have the emergency powers and we don't have a say, I can't imagine any of you would even think that at all. It is very damaging to our state, as you know. I won't go into a lot of details. I'll save that for another day. But I do want to read a letter from a constituent of mine who sent a letter to the governor. But unfortunately, the governor must be awfully busy because he can't even respond to an 8-year-old's request. And it regards the mask mandate for hockey and our sports kids. This is really very much a danger and a hazard to our children. Insisting that they wear masks when they are in sports. It is very, very tough, and it is very dangerous for the children. I would presume that all of you are getting emails constantly from your friends, from your family members, from your neighbors, that that is dangerous. So I'll just read this real quick, and then I'll be done. So it says, Dear Governor Walz, My name is Colton, and I'm 8 years old. I've been playing hockey, and I love to play for the last 4 years. I wish you would stop making us wear masks. They make it hard to breathe. The masks are really wet. The shields fog up. He cannot see. He is scared and will run into each other and get hurt. I would really like to play hockey without a mask. I would be more safe. Please stop making us wear the masks. For any purpose, we must indeed end the emergency powers to get our kids back safely in sports. The masks are hurting them, and it is dangerous. We must get rid of those and plead to the governor. He's not listening to us, but we are listening to our people. Madam Speaker.
The member from Winona, Representative Pulowski.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just want to address a couple of the things. Representative Daudt, we did have a phone call. You called me on January 6th. In fact, I think we had 2 calls because one of our phones malfunctioned and we had to call again. It was during that phone call that I did request that Representative Haley be put on this committee because of her work. Now, subsequent to that, I've had at least a couple of conversations with Representative Haley. She sent me over the weekend the material that she has collected. I have forwarded that to the committee administrator so we can use it in this upcoming hearing. I also want to talk about the special sessions for a second. We had a record, 7 special sessions. And you've heard me say this before. There is nothing special about a special session. We proved that 7 times. We also proved that our committees were not functioning in a special session. First of all, there isn't enough time. Secondly, because of the situation that we were under with Zoom and with having to deal with both state funding and federal funding at certain times, it was almost impossible to have any significant hearings outside of the dilemma of the pandemic. So I did vote to have a discussion on the House floor because I at least wanted a discussion somewhere. We now have the opportunity in committee. We have the opportunity with the public so that the public will have input. We have the opportunity to work in a bipartisan way, and I'm looking forward to that. Representative Haley's work over the last few months has been excellent. We intend on using it. But I also want to make sure that the public itself will have the opportunity to weigh in to what exactly we should do with Chapter 12 and in future emergencies. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The member from Wabasha, Representative Drazkowski.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, we've talked at length on this before. We all know that this needs to come to an end. It should have been to an end quite a while ago. I want to just read a part of Chapter 12.31, Subdivision 2, for the members to contemplate. The second sentence there, member, says a peacetime declaration of emergency shall be declared only when an act of nature, a technological failure or malfunction, a terrorist incident, an industrial accident, a hazardous materials accident, or a civil disturbance endangers life and property and local government resources are inadequate to handle the situation. 2 ands there, members, between 3 items that need to be true in order for a peacetime emergency to exist. Has to endanger life and property, and the local governments have to not have the resources necessary in order to handle it. I would suggest 2 of those for sure, and maybe to an extent relative to what we had earlier. The third one may no longer apply. So members, it's time. The emergency is over. It's time to remove the governor's powers and reassume your authority, your election certificate that's been taken from you by this governor's action. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Further discussion. Representative Winkler.
Madam Speaker, members, again, I would ask for a no vote. In addition to Representative Pulowski and Representative Haley, Representative Daudt, all of whom are serving on the committee, Representative Garofalo and O'Neill are on the committee, along with Representatives Wolgamott, Freiberg, Listlegard, Moran, Pinto, and Sandstead. So we have a very bipartisan group of legislators, people who are used to working together through the committee process. We are led by an able parliamentarian and a person who is an expert in Chapter 12, having created accounts for emergency management as a result of natural disasters in his own district. So members, we have the right people in place, the right process in place to consider this question. The motion before the body today is to take a resolution from committee. That is all the motion is. It is a procedural motion to move the resolution from one place to another and effectively prevents us from having proper process in committee. I would ask for a no vote.
Madam Speaker,
State your name.
Representative Haley.
Representative Haley.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I was trying to raise my hand. I appreciate you allowing me to speak since my name was mentioned a number of times. I would like to clarify, thank you, Member Pulowski. I was asked to join this committee about a week ago and agreed to join along with Minority Leader Daudt to roll up our sleeves, as Leader Daudt said, and address this most critical issue that all of Minnesota is asking us to address. And I'd like to clarify a bit of information that I sent to Member Pulowski a week ago regarding the emergency orders. I have done some work on this. And in 2020, there were 108 emergency orders issued. Of those, 55 have already expired. 16 don't apply directly to the current COVID situation that we're trying to manage. And 32 of those have already been codified by the legislature or are things that we probably don't have any disagreement on related to giving agencies additional flexibility and some flexibility in regulations. So that leaves us with about 6 emergency orders that we would need to roll up our sleeves and do good work to come up with bipartisan resolution. Those are related to masks, school, and capacity requirements in our gyms and restaurants, and some visitation at our long-term care facilities. And those really are the most critical issues that Minnesotans are so concerned about. So I wanted to speak in favor of Leader Daudt's motion that I do believe we've got 2 pathways here. A pathway that we can immediately address the emergency orders, and then the longer term work to rewrite Chapter 12. I am willing to join Leader Daudt and Representative Pulowski to work on both of those pathways. I'd like to speak in support of Leader Daudt's motion today. Let's pass this resolution and begin talking about 6 emergency orders that need to be addressed right away. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Since our request to speak button is clearly not working, if there's any other member seeking recognition, please state your name.
Representative Hertaus.
Representative Hertaus.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, Representative Haley and Leader Daudt, for the motion and the effort to deal with this issue. As many of you may recall, last May, I offered the first write or rewrite of Chapter 1231. That effort was blocked by the House majority on procedural motion. Just to make you aware of the urgency of this matter, the companion bill introduced back in May was carried by Senator Osmek in the Senate, and the bill has been reintroduced. I have the jackets here. The Senate is taking this same language up as a matter of urgency, and will be doing it shortly. So I implore everybody to get serious about dealing with this issue and talking about the necessary changes in Chapter 1231 that are necessary. As Representative Drazkowski has pointed out, this was not a natural occurrence. This is not a natural disaster. And it clearly is not within the confines of the law as written, but we need to fix it so that this should never be encumbered upon a future legislature again. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The member from Meeker, Representative Erdahl.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker and members. And would Representative Winkler yield for a question, please?
He will yield. Representative Erdahl.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Representative Winkler, you know, one of the things that I keep hearing in my district is, so when does this end? I mean, we are all concerned about this. We want to get through this safely, but it's when does it end? What are you aware of what the criteria may be to call an end to this and to get back to our regular lives?
Representative Winkler.
Madam Speaker, Representative Erdahl, you asked a very, very important question. How do we transition out of a time of peacetime emergency and back to a time of regular order, both at the legislature and in terms of our daily lives? We don't know yet what the final course of the pandemic will be. I do think that having an in-depth discussion in committee with public involvement and the opportunity for the executive branch to share its thoughts is the best way to start to answer that question. I also want to say, members, that the debate here today really should be about the process of moving a bill out of committee to the floor. It is not the actual subject matter of the underlying resolution or subchapter 12 that is the subject of this debate today. So obviously we have latitude in the House and we don't want to cut off debate unnecessarily. But the point here is to talk about the process of moving a bill from a committee to the floor and whether that is in order. So the more we stick to that process, the better off the House rules will be. And Representative Erdahl, great question. I would recommend that you ask that same question of Representative Pawlowski and they begin hearings on those questions.
Representative Erdahl.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, Representative Winkler. And I don't think I'll ask Representative Pawlowski to yield. I think the impression has been given how important this is to move through committee just as expeditiously as possible. This debate has gone on for months and months and months. It needs to come to an end. We need to reach a point where at least we know what the criteria is for ending it. And so again, let's, if that is where we are, that we are going to have this committee hearing, that we're going to have this process, let's get it done quickly.
Any further discussion to the motion? Representative Daudt.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'll give my second closing speech, but I do appreciate you giving me the opportunity, since it is the custom and usage that the maker of a motion or the author of a bill is always the last to speak on an issue. This is also my hint to all the members that maybe we've had enough debate on this issue. I do appreciate the debate. Representative Winkler, I think his point is valid, that this is a motion to debate whether we even bring the resolution the resolution here to the House floor and have a debate on it. I really have attempted to keep my comments to that, but relevant in that conversation is how important that debate is and why it's timely that we have that debate now and we don't delay. And I appreciate everyone's latitude in allowing us to talk about that. We have had, how important is this issue? We have had 7 special sessions just for the purpose of dealing with this question. 7 special sessions last year. I think that's more than any other time in state history. I think that's a record. I don't know what the previous record was, but we set a record. And those special sessions were called because the governor, under Chapter 12, for any emergency powers that extend beyond 30 days, he's required to call the legislature back into session to vote on whether or not, or give us the opportunity to vote to end his emergency powers. So we had 7 special sessions just for this sole purpose. Today, we're in the 2nd week of a new legislative session. Next week will be the 3rd week of a new legislative session. So an issue that was so important last year, we had 7 special sessions. We were a real legislature during those 7 special sessions. We did not have a single committee hearing on this issue last year during those 7 special sessions. And now we're being told an issue that's so important that we had to have 7 special sessions on it last year, and now that we're in session, we'll maybe get around to a hearing on it in the 3rd week of session. My plea, and I understand that this vote is probably not going to pass, and I say that not only because I respect Representative Winkler's ability to read his caucus, and I know that any good leader doesn't get out in front of their caucus, and he's not going to stand at the microphone and encourage people to vote against something that passes. I can assure you of that. So today we're not going to pass this resolution to end the emergency powers. I hope that we do. And he is right when he says this is a motion to bring it forward. So not only, yes, today you are voting against emergency powers if you vote red on this motion. That is a fact. It's not debatable. And the reason I say that is because you, in this body, you either vote to move something closer to passage or further away from passage. That's not only the custom and usage of this body, it's been tested in court. So I can say unequivocally, if you vote against this, you are voting against ending the emergency powers, period. End of discussion. And that's okay. I assume that each of you can justify why you will vote the way that you will vote, and I encourage you to vote your conscience and vote your district and represent your constituents. That's what we're all here to do. My plea to you is enough is enough. 10 months of inaction, 10 months of no hearings, 10 months of being promised that, yep, we'll deal with this. We need to go through the committee process. I'm going to tell you it's actually kind of insulting to stand here and be told that we need this to go through the committee process. As if this was a damn surprise. After 10 months of emergency powers and 7 special sessions, now we need this to go through the appropriate process. When you press your red button or your green button, think about that question. Have we had the opportunity month after month after month after month after month? I haven't been counting these, but I really want to get to 7 right now, because that's how many special sessions we had. I think I got to 5. After month after month. Not to mention last session. And now we're in the second week of a new session, and by next week when we have our first hearing on this, if we do have it, we will be in the 3rd week of the session. And we're being told that we need to follow the process and have a hearing. Enough is enough, members. I think we all can understand what it means to say we need to go through the process and have a hearing. And what we need to do is say, you know what? I know one foolproof way of making sure there's a hearing on this, and I can assure you if you vote with me today, we will have a hearing on this in the next 24 hours. I guarantee it. I guarantee it. I've never been so confident of something in my life. So you have a choice. A red button is a promise to have a hearing at some point in the future and go through the process, which we have had 10 months to go through. Or you can vote with me, and I guarantee you there will be a hearing on this tomorrow. I guarantee it. And more than one, probably. And that's exactly why I'm bringing this forward. Because the business owners who may not get to reopen their business, and the parents whose kids aren't in school, and those kids who are going to be even more disproportionately affected by the achievement gap because they're not in a classroom, deserve us to do our job today. They deserve it. Think about them. This isn't about me. This isn't about my party or your party. This isn't about my governor or your governor. This is about the low-income or minority student in the Minneapolis school district that already had less than 50% chance of graduating from high school. And now, they're remote learning. Many probably without internet connections and without a stable home life to ensure that they're really getting the education they deserve. And when you vote not to bring this up, you're voting to ignore them and say that it's okay, maybe 1 more month or 2 more months or 7 more months will go by. And this isn't about whether COVID is real or not. This is about whether you were really elected to represent your district and your constituents, and whether you really choose to do your job. And the only way that I can guarantee you that there will be a hearing on the emergency powers and give you the voice and the opportunity for your constituents to be heard, the only way that I can guarantee you will get that hearing is if you vote with me today. And I guarantee you it'll happen in the next 24 hours. I'm very sad to say that that's the case, because I wish together we could just agree that this is an important issue and we would have had hearings in the first week on this issue, not the third week, and maybe not even the third week. Now, I respect Representative Pawlowski, and please don't take offense to anything that I'm saying. I do respect you. I have told you on the phone, I will roll up my sleeves. I will work alongside you on the 30-day plan or the 60-day plan or the 6-month plan. But I'm also going to work on the 24-hour plan and the 48-hour plan. And that's what's before you today. What's before you today will force us to do our jobs. It will force a hearing on this issue. So please consider that. Please consider the minority student in the Minneapolis School District, that because their distance learning is going to fall further behind. And think of what's going to happen to them when they get out in the real world, and whether or not they're going to have the opportunities to be successful. That's why I'm here in this chamber today. That's why I serve in the legislature. They're counting on us. Let's not let them down.
The clerk will take the roll on the motion.
Madam Speaker.
We're in a roll call. Representative McDonald.
Yes, it's not reading my vote, Madam Speaker, the finger
All right.
identification.
Representative McDonald, as soon as we record all the remote votes that we can, we will call the roll of those who have not had their vote registered.
I figured so, but wanted to triple check. Yeah, it says it's doing it.
Members, please make your best effort to vote remotely. If you were intending to vote remotely, we'll give you a couple more minutes to try to get the technology to work for you, and then we will start to call names.
Madam Speaker, if you would indulge me, I might have some advice for those that are having troubles like Representative McDonald.
I'm sorry, Representative Lucero, you're out of order during a roll call. We will get back to you shortly.
Thank you.
Members, we are going to call all of those who have not had a chance to vote yet using the remote voting technology. Give us a couple minutes here, and then we will call through the remaining names.
Sent you an email. I know we talked about the meeting with Torkelson. I just sent you the on-time option with the noise.
Come on in.
About redistricting.
No, I can. Backer.
Backer votes aye.
Backer votes aye. Barr.
Barr, aye.
Barr, aye. Christensen.
Christensen, no.
Christensen, no. Davney.
Dabney votes no.
Davney, no. Damath.
Damath votes aye.
Damath, aye. Drazkowski.
Drazkowski, aye.
Drazkowski, aye. Erickson.
Erickson, aye.
Erickson, aye. Hanson.
Hanson, R, no.
Is that the right Hanson? Hanson, R, no. Hausman.
Hausman, no.
Hausman, no. Keel.
Keel votes aye.
Keel, aye. Katiza Watun.
Tiza Watun, no.
Katiza Watun, no. Mariani.
Mariani, no.
Mariani, no. Mason.
Mason, no.
Mason, no. McDonald.
Donald, yes.
McDonald, aye. Mecklin. My numbers are moving.
Aye.
Mecklin, aye. Miller.
Miller, aye.
Miller, aye. New Brindley.
New Brindley, aye.
New Brindley, aye. O'Driscoll.
O'Driscoll, yes.
O'Driscoll, aye. Olson B.
Olson B, aye.
Olson B, aye. Pulowski.
Pulowski, no.
Pulowski, no. Pinto.
Pinto, no.
Pinto, no. Sandell.
Sandell, no.
Sandell, no. Swazinski.
Swazinski, aye. Swazinski, aye.
Swazinski, aye. Liebling.
Liebling, no.
Liebling, no. Liebling. I called her, but.
Liebling, no.
Liebling votes no.
The clerk will close the roll. There being 63 ayes and 69 nays, the motion does not prevail.
Mortensen and others introduced House Concurrent Resolution Number 2, House Concurrent Resolution relating to Minnesota's peacetime emergency. House Concurrent Resolution Number 2 being referred to the Committee on Rules and Legislative Administration. Mortensen moves that the House Concurrent Resolution Number 2 be recalled from the Committee on Rules and Legislative Administration and be placed upon its adoption.
Madam Speaker.
The member from Scott, Representative Mortensen.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I will withdraw that motion.
Representative Mortensen withdraws his motion.
Drazkowski and others introduced House Concurrent Resolution Number 3, a House Concurrent Resolution relating to Minnesota's peacetime emergency. The concurrent resolution is being referred to the Committee on Rules and Legislative Administration.
Announcements. The member from Ramsey, Representative Herr.
Madam Speaker, thank you for this moment. Madam Speaker and members, in December, our community lost an influential and revered member. Tu Fu Vang, also known as Lieutenant Colonel Tu Fu Vang, left this world leaving not just the Vang clan and the Hmong community heartbroken, but also those who fought alongside trained Hmong soldiers and those who fought in the secret war in Laos. What was special about Lieutenant Colonel Tu Fu was not just his leadership in the secret war, but that he was also a pioneer, someone ahead of his time. The first Hmong to study in the United States, he spent a year in Wisconsin as a high school exchange student, before going on to major in government and graduating from Iowa State University. He returned back to his home country of Laos and taught social science and English at Dong Duc Teacher Training College. At a time when Hmong women had little to no opportunities, Tu Fu supported his sisters' educations and their endeavors and found opportunities for them to further their studies. Though education was his passion, he felt the call to serve. He later joined the Lao Army to begin his military service in Vientiane, Laos, and fought bravely as he flew with American pilots to identify enemy forces and direct U.S. Air Force bombing operations. He traveled to frontline units along the Vietnamese border to analyze the terrain, inspect troops, meet with commanders, and assess the situation on the ground. In 1975, after Laos fell into communist hands, Tu Fu left his beloved country and started a new life in America. In Chicago, he served in the Department of Health and Human Services for over 29 years. During this time, he was instrumental in the refugee resettlement program in the Midwest. His expertise and travel extended throughout the country to help Southeast Asian refugees who immigrated from Laos, Vietnam, and Cambodia. The latter part of his career was dedicated to family and child services before he finally retired and moved to Minnesota in 2010. His retirement years were used to benefit the Hmong community, starting with the Special Guerrilla Unit, or SGU, to be recognized for their efforts to defend American democracy. Some of you may remember Lieutenant Colonel Tu Fu's testimony on behalf of the bill to establish May 14th as Hmong Veterans Memorial Day, honoring Hmong soldiers who suffered, sacrificed, or died from 1961 to 1975, assisting U.S. Armed Forces. I would be remiss if I did not point out Tufu's return to education after resettlement in the U.S. Alongside Dr. Joe Westermeyer, who also happens to be my father-in-law, published seminal research on mental health among people in the Southeast Asian community. Their research totaled 7 printed and published works, along with 2 additional pieces of scholarship Tufu published with other academics. Tufu was an educator, leader, and civil servant who loved both his country of birth and the United States of America. He was known for his compassion, humility, and commitment to improving the lives of others. He held knowledge of our history, our experiences, our struggles, and our success. Knowledge that is forever gone because he is no longer with us. No words can express how much he will be missed. Madam Speaker, I request a moment of silence to honor him today.
Members, please join us in a moment of silence. The member from Stearns, Representative Tice.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I too would like to honor someone who passed away in December, my Senator, Jerry Ralph. Jerry got to be a good friend, and he was so encouraging, so positive, and it was an honor to serve with him. Jerry was very tenacious. He stopped at basically nothing. And I'm sure a lot of that came from his time as a Marine and in Vietnam. And with Vietnam came some of the times or some of the illnesses that other Vietnam vets have carried with them. Jerry carried a lot of different bills. And as one of the senators said at his funeral the other day, Jerry was very good at saying, I'm not going to go in the weeds and I'll be brief, of which neither happened. He had a wonderful sense of humor, and it was wonderful to hear his daughter talk about the man we knew as well. And one of the things she said Jerry liked to do was be with family and talk, and do other things and talk. And so Jerry was the same person with his family as he was with our family. I'm going to miss him a lot. I didn't think it was possible to work with somebody for such a short time and to realize what an impression they're going to make on your life. Jerry has 2 daughters, and he has 2 stepsons and a stepdaughter. But his wife, Peggy, is an amazing woman. And I guess I would expect nothing less of someone who's married to Jerry, because he certainly kept active. I've never seen anyone campaign like he did. He was just, there was no complaints. He just did it. And I think we can all learn from his attitude of serving. Serving meant all in, all the time. I could go on for a long time, but I'm going to miss him greatly. He was a friend before he was elected. My heart will always, always have a place for him because he was just a generous, dedicated person. And Madam Speaker, I would like to request a moment of silence, please.
The member from Stearns, Representative Wolgamott.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and colleagues. I too would like to join Representative Tice in rising to honor the memory and the legacy of my friend and colleague, Senator Jerry Ralph. I got to know Senator Ralph both as a competitor and as a colleague. Senator Ralph and I ran for the Senate seat in 2016, and even though I lost the election, I gained a friend. And Jerry was incredibly gracious and worked with me after that election. And as soon as I got elected in 2018, he immediately reached out to me, took me out to coffee, and started looking for ways that we could work together to deliver for our constituents. In these times of division, in these times of anger, and the vitriol that we're all experiencing right now, members, we need to look to Senator Jerry Ralph for an example of how to treat each other, for an example of how to reach out, not just to someone across the aisle, but a competitor, and have that graciousness and have that willingness to work together to serve Minnesotans. I'm so thankful for Jerry's willingness to work with me. I'm so proud of what we did together for the people of St. Cloud. We wouldn't have gotten funding for North Star without his willingness to step up and be a leader and get that done. He has a legacy that will last for years and years and years. And I'm so thankful for the role that he has played in my life. I miss him. It is so strange not being able to call him in these last weeks, and my heart goes out to Peggy and to his entire family. They're wonderful people and true patriots in our community of St. Cloud. So members, please join us in a moment of silence, but also join us in reflecting on how we can be more like Senator Jerry Ralph and treat each other with grace and class. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, Representative Tice. Thank you, members.
Members, please rise and join in a moment of silence for our fallen colleague, Senator Ralph. Any further announcements? Representative Jurgens.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Many of you that are in this body were here in 2018, and you remember a special day on the chamber floor when one of my constituents, Afton native Jessie Diggins, made her first public appearance after winning Olympic gold right here in this chamber. Well, over this past weekend, Jessie Diggins brought home another first. She became the first non-European to win the Tour de Ski, grueling 7-stage, 7-day cross-country ski event in Italy. She is not only, as I said, the first American woman, but no American man has ever won that. No North American woman or man has won that event. But Jessie took 4 podium finishes throughout the grueling 7 days, held on to her 55-second lead going into the final stage, and brought home the win. Now, the chamber is a little sparse today, so I won't ask for a round of applause, but I just wanted to stand and recognize just another phenomenal achievement by a phenomenal athlete from right here in Minnesota. Congratulations to Jessie Diggins.
Any further announcements? Representative Winkler.
Madam Speaker, I do have a few announcements I think are relevant to the House. First of all, the Rules Committee is meeting at 5:30 to consider permanent rules, and we do intend to, with your cooperation, take them up on the floor Thursday. Monday is Martin Luther King Jr. Day, and by tradition of the House and concurrent resolution of the House and Senate, we do not intend to meet Monday. So we will be sending a resolution back to the House to allow us to meet on Tuesday rather than Monday. And the last thing I want to inform members of is that the Revisor's Office has a backlog of bills up to 1,700 in number. And members, we have to be mindful of our staff, not just because of their health and safety, but limited capacity in certain cases to produce bills at a volume that we might have been accustomed to in the past. And we also can each think carefully whether or not the bill that we really want to get drafted right away is likely to get a committee hearing and early passage, or whether we could give them some time to catch up. So I would ask members to be cautious and considerate of staff as they proceed with introduction of bills. Madam Speaker, I move that when the House adjourns today, it adjourns until 3:30 p.m. Thursday, January 14th, 2021.
Representative Winkler moves that when the House adjourns today, it adjourns until 3:30 p.m. Thursday, January 14th, 2021. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please say no. The motion prevails. Representative Winkler.
Madam Speaker, I move that the House do now adjourn.
Representative Winkler moves that the House do now adjourn. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please say no. The motion prevails. The House stands adjourned until 3:30, January 14th, 2021.